Hello and welcome to week 5 of the curve cabinet build series. So this week there has been a major revolution in the art of editing. Here it is. Look at that. So what I'm going to do with this is basically show you the overall design to start with, because I haven't actually shown it yet. And for example here I'm working on that part of the cabinet. So now you might actually be able to follow along with what I'm doing instead of me using my awful communication skills to try and describe what the hell I'm doing. So with that in mind, I can now freely explain what's going on here. So I've got the top and bottom curves to do, and I couldn't quite make the thickness up with the leaves I had, so I cut 3 packs, split one of them in half, and then added that onto both of those packs to make 2 thicker ones. And then I could rip them as per usual on the bandsaw. Probably sick of seeing this by now, but yeah, it's a lot of bandsawing, this project. And then pop that in the bag press. And then I can make the template for the filler bit that will go inside that. So, oh yeah, I've got the thing here for it. Look, that bit. So I'm making the template for that. And to do that, I used a spiral block on the spindle moulder. There's it all flush trimmed. And then here's the material I was planning to use for that component. So again, there was a knot there with a natural curve in the grain, so I thought that would be perfect to use because it would be pretty much redundant for all other uses. And then I could just joint one edge of that on the planer, get it nice and square. And then mark the peak of that curve, so that would be the centre. Get the centre mark of the ruler along that mark, and then just mark both ends, so I could see where the curve was going to begin and end, and then just trace that on using the template. And then that was ready to be rough cut on the bandsaw. More bandsawing. So here's the 2 components. You can see I managed to get a curved bit of grain on the opposite one as well. And then I could pop that on the template I made, so making sure it was overhanging on both sides. I set up a backstop and then used some toggle cramps to hold it down, keep my fingers away because we don't want to be chopping them off, and then flush trim it to the template. And here's a close-up view. And then once the lamination was dry, I could just check the fit between the 2 components using my lovely SketchUp drawing here. Look at that. That's what I was hoping to happen, and it did. Thank God. So then to make up the... I'm not even going to try to explain it. Those bits there, oh, this is so much easier now. I could use this scrap bit of walnut, which I was planning on ripping in half, like so. Come on. Rip in half. Yep. And then rip it horizontally as well, so that would get me 4 components. Because I need 2 for the top and bottom, then I need 4 components altogether. So I started by getting rid of the pale sapwood because we didn't want any of that on there. And then ripped the board in half on the rip saw. Took it to the planer to get one face flat. And then jointed the edges as well. And then marked the centre line ready to be ripped on the bandsaw. So now for something a bit different. This is the jewellery workshop. So here I was going to do the copper for the doors. So you can see I've got the negative template there, some doors at the back, and then my copper sheets. So I started off by marking a offsetted line from the edge. And then using that offsetted line I could get the door aligned with that and scribe the internal curve. And then there it is. So I can see where the inside of the door is going to be now. And then before hammering the shit out the copper, I first of all had to soften it. So I took it over to this, I can't remember what it's called, fiery place, as you can see. And then I proceeded to heat the copper all over. Once I get the air adjusted, there we go. So heat the copper all over until it just starts to glow red. I don't want to melt it here, just get it hot, essentially, very hot. So it starts to discolour, and then it glows red ever so slightly. And once it was all of a uniform colour, I could take it over to the sink and cool it down. You can see it soften in my hands here. Almost turns to it's like a rubber consistency actually. It's quite weird. But it just starts sagging. So that's all softened, ready to go. Now I can pop that on my negative template using these pissy little hand drills, which apparently that's all they use in the jewellery workshop. I don't know how they have the time or the energy to use these things. It's like an elephant trying to thread a needle watching me do this. So as you can probably tell, it didn't take me long to get bored of that. So I took it back to the workshop and used a proper drill to go through the copper. And then using the wooden pushy device that I definitely didn't rob from the jewellery workshops, I could buff I think buff's the word for it, but I essentially pushed it into the negative template because the copper's so soft, it's really easy to do this. So to start with, I just worked around the edges, get them nice and crisp. Knock my tape measure off the workbench. And then unscrew them so I can get access to the flats on them, and then just use the same wooden pushy device thing to push them down against the template and make sure that it's going to be all on the same plane so it's easy to put in the doors later on. Then took it back to the jewellery workshop and using a planishing block, which is one of those things you can see on the left there, wrap that in a cloth type material and then push the door down into a consistent curve. So after the door was dished, I could pull some sulfuric acid in there, and that would allow me to get rid of all the impurities that arose when heating the copper and take it back to its lovely pinky orangey state. It's like backwards painting. Then just wash it off to make sure I didn't burn my fingerprints off. Then once I got rid of all the dark impurities and all that, took it over to the polisher and using a Tripoli wheel, just get rid of that pinkiness and take it back to a lovely shiny orangey coppery surface. Then to get to that middle bit, we definitely didn't need to take the guard of the machine off or anything. And then here I'm starting the planishing, so essentially this is just hammering the copper between a metal hammer and a metal block, and that just puts this really nice tactile pattern in it, and it also strengthens the copper. Not that it needs any extra strength, but it's bragging rights at the end of the day, isn't it? It's actually really hard to do this as well because you can't actually see where the block is when you're hammering it, and if you miss-hit it you end up denting the door. Like, obviously I'm denting the door by hammering it, but you dent it in the wrong way. It's really hard to explain. Basically, it's difficult. Then here's the end result. So I've got a smooth one for the inside of the cabinet, and then this planished one for the outside, so that's what you'll see on the face. This camera shot doesn't really do it justice. It looks absolutely awful in this video, but in real life it looks pretty good. And that is it for this week. So if you're interested in seeing any of my other work, feel free to click on the thing that's about to pop up now. Should be in your top right of your screen. If you're on a phone, tap the screen and it'll be there. It's an eye icon, information or something like that, don't know what it is, but that'll take you directly to my website's homepage where you can view my portfolio and social media links if you're unable to click on the ones that are on the screen. And also if you're not really up to date with what's going on, go back to my old videos. Probably avoid the first one because it's a bit rubbish. Start the second, because I'm actually talking in that one, and then you can get up to speed with everything and see what's actually going on here. But yeah, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.